Welcome. Good morning. My name is Emile Nuwaysir. I'm the chairman of the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine and the CEO of Ensoma, a member company. Welcome to MESA 2022, easily our largest MESA ever, both in terms of total registrants and in person. Record attendance, which is very cool. And I think you can feel that. I've never seen a line to pick up a badge before like that. And I just want to say before I start, thank you to everybody in this room for what you do individually and collectively in service of patients. So thank you. So in a moment, I'm very pleased to introduce our new CEO of the Alliance, Tim Hunt. But before I do that, I'd love to just take a moment and talk about what I see as some pretty remarkable progress this last year in our field. So these stories, they're individually, moments of courage either for a patient or for the scientists, the team, the regulators, but collectively they weave a pretty compelling story about where we are as an industry and how we, really are poised to see the power of this technology become much more broadly available or targeting a much larger patient population. And I think that's the compelling vision that we're all working towards, and you can really begin to see it now. So first, let's talk about gene therapy and what we've seen happening in the gene therapy space. The field is accelerating both in approvals, the pipeline, the clinical progress. We have two new diseases for which there are gene therapies approved this year, the AADC efficiency and BioMarin's hemophilia A and PTCs. That's pretty remarkable. And we have the potential for another one with CSL Behring and Unicure filing for hemophilia B. So that's a new record. 2 or maybe 3 new gene therapies, new diseases with new treatments. And that on top of the 2 Bluebird approvals this year for CALD and beta thalassemia means it was a record year for gene therapy approvals. We doubled the number of approved gene therapies this year in the field. That's remarkable. And consider this, by the time we gather next year, it's possible that we will have an approved CRISPR therapy, a science that we only really conceived of as a therapeutic tool 10 years ago. And if Vertex CRISPR therapeutics are successful, then sickle and beta thal patients will have new hope. That's remarkable. That's truly remarkable. And in vivo editing is just getting started. We have this incredibly compelling in vivo data on editing, and we have base editing for the first time entered the clinic. We treated a patient as a community this year, a patient with base editing, and we'll see more trials starting with that. That's remarkable for the first time. So very cool. And there are, on the cell therapy side, 6 approved CAR T therapies available today in the US. 2 of them are becoming our second-line treatments. So we're moving up from 5th line up to now 2nd for 2 of them. And that combined, these autologous approaches, combined with the allogeneic approaches of CAR T. So just this morning, we saw Allogene's announcement of their intent to start a pivotal trial for their allogeneic CAR T. And we have a proof of concept. You combine that with the proof of concept for in vivo CAR T that we've seen this year. And you can see how the promise of engineered T cells can be much more broadly applied. Immunotherapy can reach a much larger population of people. It's incredibly exciting. And then the last thing I'd say on that is we have now compelling data that you can use CAR Ts for autoimmune disease. And the example was curative effects in lupus. So not only are we going to reach a larger number of oncology patients, but now we're reaching into broader diseases like autoimmunity. So it's just, we can see this compelling expansion of opportunity and availability for patients. But on the other side, I think there are 2 instructive events that we should look at for 2 of our key stakeholders that represent a trend in the field that's meaningful. The first is we should be deeply encouraged by the way the FDA and its advisory committee assessed the benefit risk for Bluebird's application for CALD. It was, a remarkable decision, in my opinion, fundamental and pivotal. It, a more deep way and a courageous way of thinking about risk benefit, and I think that's meaningful for all of us. Separately, ICER, the Institute for Clinical and Economic Review, validated Bluebird's pricing and outcomes-based framework which is profound. I mean, that is a big event for all of us. We stand on the shoulders of all those that come before us, and for that, it's a remarkable event because that framework takes into account the projected savings to the healthcare system, the patient quality of life, and the quality of life of the caregivers. So in totality, all of that was considered part of the value of the patient, and it endorses a new way of thinking about the medicines that we're trying to create and make available. So that's, both of those together, I think, are profound events in our field this year. So great progress. We know that we still have tremendous hurdles. There's very real issues to discuss. I'm sure we'll get tangled up in them over panel discussions and debates this week. But we should take stock of just in 1 year how far we've come. So as you know, we at ARM, we had a leadership change when Janet Lambert announced her decision to step down, her intention to step down as CEO. And since that announcement earlier this year, the ARM board and a subset of the directors and Janet have been engaged in a search for a successor. And if Janet is in the room, I just want to say thank you for your, there's a wave, there is somebody. Thank you. I just want to say thank you for presiding and leading through this remarkable 5 years and for your commitment to help us through the transition. And I'm incredibly excited about the end product of that transition, which I'll introduce to you in a moment. It is my pleasure to introduce our new CEO, Tim Hunt, the CEO of the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine, and he'll give you his thoughts on both the field and his approach to the industry. He has over 20 years in the field in public affairs, communications, and strategic roles in peer companies that you're all familiar with, like Editas. And he's built both large and small teams. He's a fierce culture warrior and a fierce believer in the power of the people to effect change. And that's what really one of the things that endeared him to me during the search process. The search committee chose Tim largely because of his deep philosophy of engagement to the stakeholders, and his patient-centric mentality, which we believe is just what the field needs right now. Tim, I'm confident, will approach our stakeholders, both policymakers, regulators, patients, and others, with the conviction that I share, and I think we all share, in the power of this technology to change lives, but also to remain humble in what we don't know, and to address stakeholders' very real concerns, their open questions, and to earn their trust. And I really appreciate that. So Tim, it's my pleasure to introduce you. Please come on up here and take the podium. Thank you very much.